Welcome to the Win Win Evangelism Podcast. My name's Tina Waldron from Evangelism in Australia. Well, every week I love either interviewing someone or talking myself, giving you some ideas, some thoughts, some creative ways to share Jesus in your world. This week I want to talk to you about when I took a homeless woman to church. That happened recently. But before I do that, I want to let you know about a free download that may help you. It's a download that helps you answer the hard questions that people may be asking about Christianity and faith. You can get that on our website, evangelisminaustralia.com. Let me share my story with you when I took a homeless woman to church. Have you ever had one of those Sundays where you think you know exactly how the morning is going to unfold and then God completely changes your plans? That happened to me recently while I was overseas. Earlier in that week, I'd been walking around and I stumbled across a church I'd never been to before, but one that I'd always thought I'd like to go to that church. I thought, well, this is great. I'd often wondered about this church. I'll come back on Sunday. I was travelling with my son and one of his mates who isn't a Christian, so I thought it would be a great opportunity for all of us to experience church together. Now, because we're Australians, we also have another spiritual discipline, and that's coffee, and preferably before church. So we arrived a little early because there was a Starbucks across the road. We thought we'd grab a coffee, maybe something to eat, then wander into this service. Simple plan, or so I thought. As we walked towards Starbucks, a woman sitting outside with like a walker piled with some of her bags calls out to me, "Excuse me, would you buy me a drink?" Without really thinking, I said, "Of course, what would you like?" Now, I have to tell you, she didn't hesitate. She knew exactly what she wanted, a caramel frappuccino with extra caramel. And I smiled because I thought in my mind, well, she's clearly been to Starbucks before. And also I thought, I've got a homeless person asking me if I could get them a drink. I'm on my way to church. It's really unchristian, isn't it, to respond with a no for that? So then I asked her, "Would you like something to eat as well?" And her face lit up. "Oh, I'd love that," she said. Then something prompted me to ask another question. I said, "By the way, we're actually heading to church after this. Would you like to come with us?" It was just across the road. I expected her to simply say no thanks. But instead, she said something I'll never forget. "I've given up on hope." She didn't say, "I don't believe in God." She didn't say, "I don't like church." She didn't say, "I've lost hope." She said, "I've given up on hope." That sentence has stayed with me ever since. Because when someone loses hope, they've lost far more than optimism. They've lost the belief that tomorrow can be different from today. The Bible reminds us that hope has always been found in God. Paul tells us that the Lord is the God of hope, the one who fills people with joy and peace as they trust in Him in Romans. So standing there outside Starbucks, I looked at her and I said, "I understand why you might feel that way, but I still believe there is always hope." I actually met Jesus here in America many years ago, and He completely changed my life. I don't want you to give up on hope. Then we went inside. We ordered her frappuccino with extra caramel, just as she requested. We ordered her breakfast. And while we waited, I found myself thinking about Jesus. One of the remarkable things about Jesus was that the people who had been rejected by everyone else somehow felt safe enough to approach Him. The tax collectors, people living on the streets, those carrying shame, those everyone else overlooked, Jesus noticed them and they noticed Him. I wonder, do people still feel that way around us Christians? When we came back outside with the food, she looked at me and she said, "You know what? I'm actually going to come to church." So off we went. So there we were, 3 Aussies. One was a teenager who wasn't a Christian and a homeless woman pushing a elderly aide overflowing with her belongings. I'm fairly sure we were the average group walking into church that Sunday. As we crossed the car park together, I found myself smiling because I thought to myself, this feels exactly like the sort of group Jesus would have walked in with. Jesus himself knew what it meant to live without earthly security. During his ministry, he said that foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. He understood vulnerability. He understood dependence. Perhaps that's one reason he was always drawn to those on the margins. When we arrived at church, people smiled politely. Nobody was rude, but I don't think anyone quite knew what to do. To be fair, I'm not sure I would always know what to do either. It's easy to imagine that we'd respond perfectly. Real life is often a little messier than that, if you know what I mean. Nobody showed us where the auditorium was, which was a bit strange because there's 3 of us with Aussie accents and a homeless person, and I thought it was obvious that we were new, but eventually I asked someone. We found our way in and sat near the back of the church. I figured if I were in her shoes, I'd probably want to be somewhere quiet and inconspicuous. As we sat down, she leaned over and she whispered to me, "I feel a bit embarrassed." That really broke my heart. I smiled and I quietly replied, "Oh no, this is the one place where you should never have to feel embarrassed." Because isn't that what the church is supposed to be? A place where people encounter grace, where they feel at home? Paul reminds us to welcome one another just as Christ has welcomed us. James warns believers not to show favoritism based on appearance or status. The gospel levels the playing field. At the foot of the cross, none of us stands higher than anyone else. We all come as people in need of grace. This episode is brought to you by the Share Jesus membership from Evangelism in Australia. Whether you're an individual wanting to grow in sharing your faith or a pastor wanting to build a culture of evangelism in your church, there's a membership designed for you. Best of all, your first month is completely free, so you can check it out and trial it to see if it's the right fit for you and your church. Go to sharejesus.com.au for all the information. As the service began, something beautiful happened. She was so exhausted. She told me that she hadn't slept for days because of fear of what would happen to her. She started leaning against her elderly walker thing. I keep calling it a shopping trolley, but it was like a walker. It looked so uncomfortable. So I quietly said to her, "If you'd like, you can just lean on me." And she did. She rested her head on my shoulder and she simply went to sleep. Think about that for a moment. While worship was filling the room, a homeless woman finally felt safe enough to rest. I found myself thinking, perhaps this is worship too. Not just the songs we sing, but the love we show. John writes that if we claim to love God while closing our hearts to people in need, something doesn't line up. Love is never just something we say, it becomes something we do. Later she woke up. I asked if she'd like me to gently massage her back because as a woman, I know I would appreciate that if I was tired and exhausted with life. She smiled and said, "Yes, please." So there I was, listening to the sermon, quietly rubbing this lady's back. I have to admit that wasn't on my holiday itinerary, but neither was buying a Frappuccino with extra caramel. Sometimes God's best appointments are the ones we never planned. The service finished. I asked her what she needed or what she wanted as I was leaving my hotel that afternoon and making my way to the airport to come home to Australia. She turned to me and quietly said, "I'd really love a shower. Not money, not more food, a shower." Something many of us never even think about. So I found someone and I said, "I need a little help here. My friend would really love a shower." Eventually, people started trying to work out what could be done. Someone went to find a pastor, then someone else, then another person. It took a while, to be honest, but eventually a pastor, a female pastor, came down and greeted us warmly. The wonderful thing was this female pastor knew this lady that I'd brought. I can't tell you what a relief that was because I was flying back home and wanted to know she could be cared for. I couldn't stay, but I could leave knowing she was now connected with someone who already knew her story. As everything settled down, someone kindly said to me, "Thank you for doing that. Not everyone can do what you do." I've thought about that sentence a lot because I actually don't agree with that. They said to me, "Thank you for doing that. Not everyone can do what you do." Well, I absolutely disagree with that. Not everyone can solve homelessness. Not everyone is called into that ministry, but I believe everyone can do something. The Good Samaritan didn't solve every problem on the Jericho Road. He simply stopped for the one person God placed in front of him. That's all God asks for. We can buy a coffee. We can share a meal. We can learn someone's name. We can sit beside them. We can make room. We can introduce them to someone who can help. Paul encourages us not to grow tired of doing good and to take every opportunity to do good whenever we can. Notice he doesn't say do everything. He says take the opportunity that's in front of you. As I reflected later, something struck me. That church had an announcement that day celebrating its partnership with a homeless ministry nearby to which this woman had been connected to on and off. And that's wonderful. Churches absolutely should partner with organisations doing incredible work. But that morning, God didn't send them 100 homeless people. He sent one. And I found myself wondering, are we sometimes better at loving people through organised programs than through unexpected interruptions? Jesus' ministry was full of interruptions. People stopped him on the roads. They cried out from the crowds. They touched his cloak. Children climbed into his arms. Blind men shouted his name. Jesus never seemed annoyed by the interruptions. He often turned them into the very ministry his Father had prepared for him. Maybe that's true for us too. Maybe our interruptions are often God's invitations. It was a fascinating morning at church. I want to leave you with one final thought. The woman said to me outside Starbucks, "I've lost hope." I don't know where she is today. I actually don't know what happened next, but I hope that somewhere in her memory she remembers one Sunday morning when strangers walked beside her, bought her breakfast, brought her a coffee with extra caramel, let her rest, prayed for her, helped her connect with someone who cared, because sometimes hope isn't restored through one spectacular moment. Sometimes hope begins with one small act of kindness after another. Maybe that's why Proverbs says that when we're kind to people in need, we're honouring the Lord himself. Jesus taught that whatever we do for those who are hungry, thirsty, lonely, or overlooked, it's as though we're doing it for him, himself. That's an extraordinary thought, isn't it? Perhaps every person we meet is an opportunity to love Jesus in disguise. So this week, can I encourage you with one simple challenge? Don't try to change the whole world. Just don't miss the one person God places in your path. Buy the coffee, share the meal, learn the name, offer the welcome, become interruptible. because you never know when an ordinary moment, or in my case, an ordinary Sunday, an unexpected conversation, and a caramel frappuccino with extra caramel might become one of the holiest moments of your week. Well, God bless you. Thanks for listening again. I look forward to being with you next week.